Hello everybody, dear students of intermediate class, welcome to my online class once again. How are you? Hope you all are fine. You know that we are talking about right form of verbs, and today I have decided to talk about a very interesting issues in English grammar. State verbs and action verbs. Most probably you have some idea about these state verbs and action verbs. You know that a verb is of different types. For example, principal verbs or auxiliary verbs, transitive verbs or intransitive verbs, finite verb or non-finite verbs. And there are many other types of verbs from different point of view, and these are state verbs and action verbs. Very smart name. I think you will agree with me that state verbs. I think you are waiting with curiosity to know what is state verbs and also action verbs. So let's at first try to understand what is state verbs. State means state, conditions. I have written some of the state verbs here. How many verbs I have written here on the board? If you can count, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. These are the major state verbs, and there are some other state verbs, of course, but frequently these state verbs are used in our day-to-day life. And what about action verbs? Majority of the verbs, majority numbers of verbs are action verbs. That is, state verbs are fewer than action verbs. State verbs are fewer in number. Anyway, so how can we define state verbs? State verbs express or denote some states or conditions which are relatively static. Let me write down the definition of state verbs. Why should I write? I can write here. That is, state verbs denote something, some conditions which are relatively static. What is static? Static means S-T-A-T-I-C. Static. The opposite or the antonym of static is dynamic. So static means something which is not dynamic, which is immobile. We can say that immobile or fixed. You are familiar with the word fixed or set or unchanging or unchangeable, unchanged, etc. So static means the thing which has the tendency not to be changed, that is fixed, that is set, that is stationary. S-T-A-T-I-O-N, fixed, stationary. So state verbs are those verbs which denote or express something which have the tendency to be stationary, not to be changed, or to be set. And this type of verbs include verbs of perception. Perceptions means senses. Verbs of cognition, verbs of emotion, related to emotion and a state of being. If we consider these state verbs, we will find the evidence that how these verbs express our feelings related to our senses, 5 senses, our emotion or state of being, as these verbs express something which are related to our perceptions or our senses or our emotion. These verbs are called state verbs. They include perception, senses, emotion and state of being. These verbs just consider appear. These verbs appear means seem, that is related to something static, something unchanged, something related to our feelings, to our guess, to our assumption, that is appear. Then believe. Believe is a kind of condition or a state. Then belong, kind of condition. Consider, consist, contain. If you notice, I have written these words alphabetically, that is with A and then B and then C, that is alphabetically I have arranged these words here. So, appear, believe, belong, you should memorize these words, just few words, state verbs. Appear, believe, belong, consider, consist, contain, doubt, exist, fit, hate, hear, have, know, like, love, matter, mean, need, owe, own, prefer, remember, resemble, seem, suppose, suspect, understand, want, wish, etc. So, these state verbs I have written here on the board alphabetically. You need to memorize these words to be benefited in your practical life, because by using these words you can produce generatively a lot of sentences which you can utilize in your day-to-day life. Anyway, so I have said that these verbs are related to our senses. Dear students, you know that we have 5 senses. That is our sense of sight, our sense of hearing, our sense of what should I say, sense of feelings, sense of smell and sense of touch. These verbs express or denote something which are directly related to our senses. That is related to our visual sight, that is the sense of eye or visual sight, and they express something which related to our auditory system, that is sense of hearing, for example hear, and visual sight, for example notice or see, etc. Then sense of smell, that is the olfactory sense, for example smell. This is a kind of state verbs, though I haven't written that here. So smell, I can written it here, smell related to our olfactory sense, and then auditory sense, sense of hearing, for example here. So visual related to eye, auditory related to hearing, smell, olfactory related to smell, and tactile, that is related to touch, feel. And these verbs also express something which is related to our cognition. Cognition means, you know, cognition means understanding, feelings, or our heart, related to something heart, our heart and mind. So these verbs, the state verbs also related to our cognition, that is they express something which is related to our understanding, to our feelings, to our heart, to our mind. When we use the word love, like, hate, like, love. All these are related to our feelings, our heart and mind. So this type of words, this type of verbs are called state verbs. So how can we summarize the verbs? There are some verbs which express some states or conditions which are relatively static, that is immobile, and they include our sense of perception, our sense of cognition, our senses or state of being, etc. These are the major state verbs. Now, what do these verbs do? These verbs have two basic features and these are important. Number one, these state verbs are not normally used in the passive. Some of them, certain state verbs from here, not all the state verbs, some of the state verbs, certain of the state verbs are not normally used in the passive, though they are transitive. Number one rule. And number two, rule two, these state verbs are not normally used in continuous forms. So, we are getting two major phases of state verbs which are very important for us to use the correct form of verbs. We need to understand these two phases of state verbs. That is, state verbs, number one feature is state verbs are not normally used in the passive. Some of the state verbs are not normally used in the passive, though they are transitive. What is transitive? Transitive verbs means the verbs which takes an action, an object. The verb which has the object is called transitive verb. And intransitive verb, the verb which doesn't have an object. So, even if certain of the state verbs take an object and become transitive, still they cannot be used in passive. And another major feature of these state verbs is that they are normally not used in continuous form. So, let me explain. Dear students, now carefully notice what I am writing here on the board to understand the nature of state verbs. Rules, I have already mentioned that we are mainly two pieces of state verbs. We have two features of state verbs. Number one, certain state verbs are not used in the passive even if they are transitive. Number one, certain state verbs, I am not talking about all the state verbs, but certain, some of the state verbs cannot be used in the passive even if they are transitive. For example, just through a very common and simple example, let me explain. I have a car, or our family is consisted of 5 members. very simple J2 example. The two examples have been collected from our everyday life. That is, frequently we make mistakes regarding this type of sentences. Here is have. This is a state verb. I wrote here, you can remember, and then consist another state verbs, no doubt. And I have a cow. This is an active voice. This is in active voice. I have a cow. When have means own. That is in position of something. Have means own. So I have a cow. If you make it in passive, that is a cow is had by me. Supposing that you have some idea about passivization. So this is no doubt grammatically there is no mistake here. A cow is had by me, but we should not do it, because have is such a state verb. When it means own, it cannot be used in the passive. So this is not a correct sentence. Semantically, a cow is had by me. Then what type of sentence is it? In our day-to-day life, we tend to use or make this type of sentences. Sometimes we are tested given this type of sentences. Actually, as this is a state verb, and this state verb cannot be used in a passive sentence. And then our family is consisted of 5 members. Here is a mistake. This is a passive sentence, as this is a state verb, and this state verb cannot be used in passive form. So we should use, the correct sentence is our family once consists of 5 members. So not our family is consisted, this is passive, but our family consists. You should write in this way. So we should remember that certain state verbs cannot be used in passive. If you use them in passive, then it will be wrong. So remember it. And let me leave this discussion of passivization here, because I want to discuss these rules in detail in my next class. That is where the passivization is not allowed in English grammar. I hope I will be able to discuss this in my next class. This is rule number 1, that some state verbs should not be used in the passive. And rule number 2, or feature number 2 of state verbs. Feature number 2, state verbs are not normally used, in the continuous form. This is feature number 2. State verbs are not normally used in the continuous forms. For example, I am needing a phone. William is seeming trapped. My friends were wishing me on my birthday. Is seeming, were wishing. No, these are normally, these are not correct sentences. Or I am loving my she is loving her children. Or you are hating your neighbors. I have written some continuous forms here. These are the state verbs. Some of the state verbs I have written here. Need, you know, seem, wish, love and hate. I have written 5 sentences using some state verbs here, that is need, seem, wish, love and hate. But these are not correct sentences, though grammatically there is no mistake sometimes as we claim, but actually they are not correct because we are using continuous form of state verbs, but state verbs are not normally used in continuous forms, normally used in continuous form. So, I am needing a phone. No, I need a phone. I need a phone. Or we can give another example. For example, we can also, I have written here all the affirmative sentences. This is also true in the case of interrogative sentences or negative. Let me give the example of an interrogative sentence. For example, who is this wallet belong to? Who is this wallet belong to? Belonging to. Belong is a state verb which should not be used in continuous form. So, belonging, it's not correct, but it should be who does this wallet belong to? Belong to, not belonging. Is belonging. Is belonging is not correct. Belong is a state verb and we should not use it normally in continuous form. Dear students, do you know what is wallet? Wallet is what should I say? Wallet is money bag carried by the males, whereas women carry pouch. So, wallet is a money bag, a pocket sized flat. How can I define wallet? A money bag you have already understood, but how can I define a wallet? A pocket sized flat holder, a pocket sized flat folding holder for money and plastic cards. It can be called a wallet. A pocket sized flat folding holder for money and the plastic cards can be said wallet. Anyway, William is seeming tired. This is not correct. Seem is a state verbs and William seems tired. William not is, but William seems tired. My friends were wishing me, not were. This is in past continuous form. We should not use state verbs in continuous forms. My friends wished me, past, in simple past, wished me on my birthday. She is loving her children. No, she loves her children. You are hating your neighbors. This is wrong. You hate your neighbors. So, state verbs are not normally used in continuous forms. So, I have explained 2 of the major features of state verbs. I believe that you will practice and try to learn something more about state verbs. Then what about action verbs? What is action verbs? As I have already mentioned that majority of the verbs in English are action verbs. Action verbs as it name suggests, action verbs express some activities, processes, some temporary actions, or should I say, yes, temporary actions or physical condition. So, action verbs indicate, denote or express some activities, processes, temporary actions or temporary or momentary actions and physical conditions. So, what is the basic difference between state verbs and action verbs? State verbs indicates or denotes some states or conditions which are relatively static, that is immobile or set or fixed, whereas action verbs express some activities, some processes, some momentary actions or physical conditions. You can also say momentary actions, and these action verbs can be used in the passive and also in the continuous forms as opposed to the rule of state verbs. Let me give some examples. If you can understand state verbs, then it is easier for you to understand action verbs. Let me give some examples of by using action verbs. These action verbs can be used in the passive on the one hand, and these also can be used in the continuous forms. Ima had been reading the epic for months. Ima had been reading the epic, as I have used here read. This is an action verbs, because by using read, Ima is doing some action. She is doing the action of reading, and what is she doing? This past perfect continuous tense, and this is correct because this is action verb. So, I have used this in continuous form. And what is an epic? Dear students, do you know what is an epic? A long narrative poem which is written in elevated style, in which a hero fights for the collective interest of his nation. So, a long narrative poem in elevated style is called epic. For example, Iliad, Odyssey, etc. Anyway, and then let me give another example by using action verbs in continuous forms. For example, someone's knocking at the door. Knock, this is an action verb, and someone is, it means is knocking at the door. I have used this in continuous form, and you can also use these action verbs. Majority, most of the verbs in English are action verbs. So, dear students, let's stop here. I hope you have enjoyed today's class, and I invite you to join my next class. Thank you very much for joining me live today.